Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like something was off? Nothing obvious happened. Nobody insulted you. Nobody raised their voice. They smiled. They laughed. They even said all the right things. But somehow, you felt smaller after talking to them. Most people ignore that feeling because they're trained to look for obvious enemies. They believe hatred is loud, emotional, and easy to identify. The truth is exactly the opposite. The most dangerous dislike is silent. It hides behind compliments, fake concern, forced smiles, and polite conversations. The people who secretly resent you rarely attack directly. Instead, they slowly weaken your confidence, damage your reputation, and wait patiently for opportunities to watch you fail. The frightening part is that they often don't even realize they're doing it. Jealousy, insecurity, and resentment leak through tiny behaviors that almost nobody notices. Today, you're going to learn how to recognize those hidden signals before they cost you friendships, opportunities, or peace of mind. Because once you can see silent hostility, you stop becoming its victim. At first glance, these people appear supportive. They congratulate you when something good happens. They tell others they're happy for you. They may even offer encouragement when you're working toward a goal. If you only listened to their words, you would believe they're completely on your side. But genuine support is measured by consistency, not vocabulary. There is a noticeable difference between someone who truly wants to see you succeed and someone who only wants to appear supportive. The difference isn't usually found in what they say. It's found in the emotions they cannot completely hide. One of the easiest ways to recognize fake support is to pay attention to your emotional state after interacting with them. Real supporters leave you feeling energized, understood, and confident. Hidden resentment has the opposite effect. After spending time with someone who secretly dislikes you, you often feel uncertain about yourself without being able to explain why. They haven't criticized you directly, yet your enthusiasm somehow disappears. That's because subtle emotional signals affect us more deeply than obvious words. Humans are constantly reading facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and timing without conscious awareness. Your brain notices inconsistencies long before your logical mind catches up. Imagine telling two different people that you've achieved something you've worked on for years. The first person immediately lights up. Their excitement feels natural. They ask questions because they're genuinely interested. They celebrate with you, and their happiness actually increases your own. The second person also says, "That's amazing, but something feels different." Their smile lasts only a moment. Their eyes don't reflect excitement. They quickly change the subject or begin talking about themselves. The words sound supportive, but the emotion behind them feels absent. Most people ignore this difference because they're conditioned to trust language more than behavior. Yet behavior rarely lies. People who secretly resent you often understand that openly expressing jealousy would damage their image. Instead, they learn to perform support. They know what they're supposed to say. They know when to clap, when to smile, and when to congratulate you. But performance requires effort, and effort creates small leaks. Their enthusiasm arrives a second too late. Their compliments sound rehearsed instead of spontaneous. Their attention drifts away whenever your success becomes the topic. These tiny inconsistencies reveal emotions they're trying to keep hidden. Another common pattern is selective encouragement. They support your goals only when those goals don't threaten their own identity. As long as you're operating below their level or outside their area of comparison, they seem encouraging. But the moment your progress begins to surpass theirs, the atmosphere changes. Suddenly, they become cautious. They offer unnecessary warnings. They tell you to be realistic. They remind you how difficult success is. On the surface, it sounds like practical advice. Underneath, it's often an attempt to reduce your momentum. They aren't protecting you from failure. They're protecting themselves from comparison. This behavior usually isn't planned. In many cases, they don't wake up thinking they want to hold you back. Instead, your achievements force them to confront uncomfortable questions about their own lives. Every accomplishment you make becomes silent evidence of opportunities they ignored, discipline they lacked, or risks they were unwilling to take. Rather than face those feelings honestly, the mind looks for ways to reduce the discomfort. One easy solution is to quietly discourage the person creating it. Notice how these individuals react when you share new ideas. Someone who truly supports you becomes curious. They ask how they can help. They encourage you to keep going. Someone hiding resentment often responds with immediate skepticism. Before you've even explained your plan, they're listing reasons it probably won't work. They mention other people who failed. They predict problems that haven't happened yet. They disguise negativity as realism, convincing themselves they're simply being honest while gradually draining your motivation. Their compliments also tend to contain invisible limits. Instead of appreciating your effort, they'll focus on luck or circumstances. They'll say things like, "You were fortunate," or "the timing was perfect," rather than recognizing the discipline behind your success. This allows them to acknowledge your achievement without fully giving you credit for it. By attributing your progress to external factors, they preserve their own sense of superiority while appearing polite. You may also notice that they become strangely quiet when others praise you. In group conversations, genuine supporters often add positive stories about your character or your hard work. People carrying hidden resentment usually remain silent. They don't openly disagree because that would expose them, but they also refuse to strengthen the positive image others are building. Silence becomes its own message, especially when enthusiasm would have been the natural response. Sometimes fake support appears as excessive agreement. They constantly tell you what you want to hear, not because they believe it, but because they want to maintain access to your trust. They avoid honest conversations, suppress genuine opinions, and create the illusion of loyalty. This kind of agreement isn't kindness, it's strategy. Real supporters care enough to tell you difficult truths when necessary, while secretly resentful people often choose whatever response keeps them close enough to observe your life without revealing their true feelings. One of the strongest indicators that someone secretly resents you isn't how they react when you're struggling. Almost anyone can offer sympathy when life isn't going your way. The real test comes when you succeed. Success has a way of exposing emotions that people have spent years hiding. It forces comparison, and comparison reveals insecurity. A person who genuinely cares about you experiences your victories as something worth celebrating. A person who secretly dislikes you experiences them as a reminder of what they haven't accomplished. Watch their energy carefully when you share good news. Imagine telling someone that you received a promotion, started a successful business, achieved a fitness goal, or reached an important milestone. Their first reaction is often the most honest because it happens before they have time to control it. You might notice a brief pause, a forced smile, a flicker of disappointment, or an expression that disappears almost instantly. Within seconds, they recover and say, "Congratulations," but your mind remembers that tiny moment. Most people dismiss it because it seems too small to matter. In reality, those first few seconds often reveal emotions that words cannot hide. People who secretly resent you usually minimize your achievements. Instead of recognizing the work you invested, they immediately explain why your success isn't as impressive as it appears. They'll say things like, well, anyone could have done that, or you just got lucky, or the market was good, or you knew the right people. Notice what's happening beneath the surface. They aren't celebrating your effort. They're, s- they're searching for explanations that make your accomplishments seem ordinary. If they can convince themselves that your success came from luck instead of ability, they don't have to question why they haven't achieved similar results. Another common behavior is changing the subject as quickly as possible. You excitedly share something meaningful, expecting a conversation, but within moments they're talking about themselves or an unrelated topic. It feels strangely dismissive. They don't ask questions. They don't seem curious. They don't invite you to explain your journey. Your accomplishment becomes a brief interruption rather than something worthy of attention. This isn't always intentional, but it often reflects an emotional discomfort with seeing you in a position of growth. Sometimes their response sounds positive on the surface, but carries a hidden edge. They might say, let's see how long it lasts, or don't get too confident, or I hope this doesn't change you. These statements are often disguised as practical advice or concern, but they quietly pull attention away from your achievement and toward the possibility of failure. Instead of allowing you to enjoy the moment, they immediately introduce doubt. It's a subtle way of reducing the emotional impact of your success. Now compare that with how they react when something goes wrong. Suddenly they become engaged. They ask more questions. They offer long conversations. They seem unusually interested in every detail of the problem. While genuine friends also provide support during difficult times, people carrying hidden resentment often display more emotional energy when you're failing than when you're thriving. Your setbacks make them comfortable because they restore a sense of balance. If your success created feelings of comparison, your failure removes that pressure. Pay attention to how often they remind you of your mistakes. Even after you've recovered from a setback, they continue bringing it up in conversations. They laugh about old failures, reference embarrassing moments, or tell stories that place you in a weaker position. Meanwhile, your achievements receive very little attention. It's almost as if your failures become permanent memories, while your successes are temporary events. This imbalance isn't random. The mind naturally remembers information that supports existing emotional beliefs. You'll also notice that these people are unusually quick to spread news when something goes wrong. If you make a mistake, somehow everyone hears about it. They don't necessarily invent lies. They simply become enthusiastic messengers of negative information. Yet, when you accomplish something meaningful, they remain silent. They don't share your victories with the same excitement. The difference reveals what captures their emotional attention. Hidden resentment also appears through comparison. Rather than simply acknowledging your success, they immediately mention someone who has done better. You buy a new home, and they talk about someone with a bigger one. You complete a difficult project, and they mention another person who achieved more. You improve your health, and they point out someone who's even fitter. Every accomplishment is followed by another comparison that quietly reduces its significance. The goal isn't to inspire you. The goal is to prevent your success from standing on its own. In group settings, this behavior becomes even more noticeable. If others begin praising you, the secretly resentful person may interrupt with a joke, redirect the conversation, or mention one of your past mistakes. They rarely attack directly because doing so would make them appear bitter. Instead, they introduce just enough negativity to weaken the positive image forming around you. It's subtle enough that most people don't notice, yet powerful enough to change the emotional tone of the conversation. Perhaps the clearest sign is the emotional contrast between your highs and your lows. Your victories receive polite acknowledgement, while your failures receive genuine attention. Your progress is met with caution, but your struggles are met with unexpected enthusiasm. Over time, this pattern becomes impossible to ignore, revealing that beneath the surface of friendly words is someone who feels far more comfortable watching you fall than watching you rise. People who secretly resent you are rarely satisfied with simply observing your strengths. Their attention naturally drifts toward your weaknesses, not because they genuinely want to help you improve, but because your flaws provide emotional comfort. Every weakness they discover reduces the gap they feel between themselves and you. If your success makes them uncomfortable, your imperfections restore their sense of balance. This is why they often become unusually interested in your mistakes, insecurities, and vulnerable moments. At first, this attention can be difficult to recognize because it often disguises itself as curiosity. They ask questions that seem harmless on the surface. They want to know what you're worried about, what challenges you're facing, or what keeps you awake at night. In healthy relationships, these questions come from empathy. The person wants to understand you better so they can support you. But someone carrying hidden resentment asks with a different purpose. They're quietly gathering information. Every insecurity you reveal becomes another piece of knowledge they may use later, whether consciously or unconsciously. Notice how conversations with these people often drift toward your problems instead of your progress. You might begin by talking about an exciting opportunity, but somehow the discussion shifts to everything that could go wrong. They encourage you to focus on your doubts rather than your confidence. Before long, you're explaining your fears instead of celebrating your achievements. It feels like a normal conversation in the moment, yet afterward you realize you've shared far more of your vulnerabilities than you intended. One subtle behavior is how carefully they remember your failures. You may casually mention a mistake from years ago, and months later, they bring it up with surprising accuracy. They remember the details of your embarrassing moments, your financial struggles, your relationship problems, or the times you lacked confidence. Yet, when it comes to your accomplishments, their memory suddenly becomes selective. They forget the promotions, the victories, the personal growth, and the sacrifices that brought you where you are. This imbalance reveals where their emotional attention naturally settles. People who secretly dislike you also tend to test your emotional reactions. They make small comments designed to see what affects you. Perhaps they tease you about something you've admitted you're insecure about. If you react strongly, they mentally note it. They now know where your emotional defenses are weakest. Later, during disagreements or competitive situations, those same subjects mysteriously reappear. It may look accidental, but the pattern becomes difficult to ignore once you've seen it enough times. Another sign is their habit of pointing out flaws that nobody else considers important. You finish an impressive presentation, and instead of discussing the overall success, they mention one tiny mistake. You complete a difficult project, and they focus on the single detail that wasn't perfect. You achieve a personal milestone, and they immediately identify something you still need to improve. Constructive criticism has value when it's balanced with recognition of what went well. Hidden resentment rarely offers that balance. It magnifies imperfections while shrinking accomplishments. These individuals often disguise criticism as helpful advice. They'll tell you they're only trying to make you better, only being honest, or only looking out for your best interests. Sometimes that's true. Honest feedback is essential for growth. The difference lies in frequency and timing. Genuine supporters recognize your strengths first and choose appropriate moments to discuss weaknesses. Secret resentment looks for weaknesses almost constantly. Improvement isn't the goal. Emotional equalization is. Watch how they respond when you make a small mistake in public. Most people either ignore it or help you recover without drawing attention to it. Someone carrying hidden hostility often does the opposite. They repeat the mistake, joke about it, or subtly make sure others notice. They don't attack directly because that would expose their intentions. Instead, they highlight your error just enough to influence how others perceive you. It's a quiet attempt to lower your status without appearing openly aggressive. Another revealing pattern is how often they compare your weaknesses to someone else's strengths. Instead of encouraging your growth, they create comparisons that make you feel inadequate. They'll mention how organized someone else is when you're feeling overwhelmed, or how confident another person seems when you've admitted feeling uncertain. These comparisons rarely offer practical solutions. Their primary effect is making you question your own abilities. People with hidden resentment also pay close attention to moments when you're emotionally exposed. If you're stressed, grieving, frustrated, or exhausted, they may suddenly become unusually observant. Rather than helping you regain your footing, they quietly study how you behave under pressure. They notice what causes you to lose patience, what makes you defensive, and what situations shake your confidence. Information gathered during these moments becomes valuable because people reveal their true emotional patterns when they're under strain. Perhaps the most subtle behavior is that they encourage you to doubt yourself. Instead of directly saying you're incapable, they ask questions that slowly weaken your confidence. Are you sure you're ready for that? What if this doesn't work? Have you thought about how difficult it could be? Asked occasionally, these are reasonable questions. Asked repeatedly, they begin to reshape your thinking. You start questioning decisions you once felt confident about. Without realizing it, you've adopted the uncertainty they quietly hoped you would feel. Over time, these small behaviors create a consistent pattern. Your strengths are acknowledged briefly, your weaknesses receive lasting attention, your insecurities become recurring topics, and your mistakes seem impossible for them to forget. They may never openly admit resentment, but their focus continually reveals where their emotions truly live, because people inevitably invest their attention in whatever matters most to them, and someone who secretly dislikes you will almost always spend more energy searching for your cracks than appreciating your character. One of the safest ways for someone to express hidden resentment is through humor. A joke gives them something powerful, plausible deniability. If you react, they can immediately say you misunderstood, that you're being too sensitive, or that they were only trying to make everyone laugh. This creates a situation where they can deliver criticism without accepting responsibility for it. On the surface, it sounds playful. Underneath, it often carries emotions they've been unwilling to express directly. Not every joke is a sign of hostility. Healthy friendships are built on humor, teasing, and shared laughter. The difference is intention. Genuine teasing strengthens relationships because everyone feels respected, even while laughing. Passive-aggressive humor creates discomfort. You laugh because you don't want to make the situation awkward, not because you actually found it funny. Deep down, something feels slightly insulting, but it's difficult to explain exactly why. Imagine you're in a group of friends and someone says, "Don't ask them to help. They usually mess things up." Everyone laughs. Maybe even you laugh. The person quickly smiles and says, "I'm kidding." But think about what just happened. Out of all the possible jokes they could have made, they chose one that questioned your competence. The laughter distracts everyone from the message, yet the message still lands. Repeated often enough, these jokes begin shaping how people see you. People who secretly dislike you often hide truthful opinions inside humorous comments. They don't invent criticism on the spot. Instead, they disguise genuine beliefs as entertainment. This allows them to express resentment while protecting themselves from confrontation. If nobody objects, they feel validated. If someone challenges them, they retreat behind the shield of comedy. It's a low-risk strategy for revealing emotions without appearing openly hostile. Pay attention to what they joke about repeatedly. Everyone has countless opportunities for humor, yet secretly resentful people often return to the same themes. Maybe they constantly joke about your intelligence, your appearance, your career, your relationships, your financial situation, or your confidence. At first, each comment seems insignificant, but over months or years, the pattern becomes obvious. Their humor consistently points toward areas that lower your status rather than strengthen your connection. Timing also matters. Notice when these jokes appear. Often, they happen immediately after you've experienced success. Perhaps you've just received praise from others, shared good news, or accomplished something important. Rather than joining the celebration, they interrupt the positive moment with a joke that subtly brings you back down. The room laughs, the attention shifts, and your achievement loses some of its emotional impact. It happens so smoothly that few people recognize what occurred. Another common behavior is delivering compliments that secretly contain insults. Statements like, "You're actually smarter than I expected," or "You clean up pretty well," or "I didn't think you'd be able to pull that off." These comments appear positive because they end with praise, but the first half quietly plants a negative assumption. Instead of simply recognizing your achievement, they remind everyone that they originally expected less from you. The compliment becomes a vehicle for hidden criticism. Passive aggression also appears through exaggerated sarcasm. Someone might repeatedly imitate the way you speak, mock your habits, or exaggerate your personality traits whenever others are watching. If you respond, they'll insist they're just having fun. But notice whether everyone is laughing together or whether the laughter consistently comes at your expense. Healthy humor includes everyone. Passive-aggressive humor usually chooses one person as the target over and over again. These individuals often test your emotional boundaries. They'll make increasingly personal jokes to see what you'll tolerate. If you stay silent, they push a little further next time. If you finally object, they act surprised and accuse you of lacking a sense of humor. Suddenly, you're defending yourself instead of addressing their behavior. This reversal is one of the most effective parts of passive aggression because it shifts attention away from what they said and toward how you reacted. Watch how they behave when someone else makes a similar joke about you. A genuine friend may laugh briefly, but will notice if you're uncomfortable and help change the subject. Someone hiding resentment often encourages the situation. They add another joke, another story, or another embarrassing detail. Instead of allowing the moment to pass, they build on it. Your discomfort becomes entertainment, and your lowered status becomes part of the group's dynamic. Another subtle sign is the use of concern disguised as humor. They may jokingly question your decisions, your ambitions, or your abilities in ways that sound lighthearted but slowly introduce doubt. Comments like, "Let's hope you don't ruin this one too," or "We'll see if you actually stick with it this time," are delivered with a smile, yet they quietly reinforce a negative image. Over time, repeated exposure to these remarks can influence not only how others see you, but also how you see yourself. The most revealing detail is consistency. Everyone occasionally makes an awkward joke or says something they didn't mean. But when one person's humor repeatedly targets your insecurities, minimizes your achievements, highlights your mistakes, and leaves you feeling diminished rather than connected, the pattern speaks louder than any individual comment. Their words may arrive wrapped in laughter, but the emotions behind them are often far more serious than the smile on their face suggests. One of the clearest signs that someone secretly dislikes you is the growing distance between what they say and what they actually do. Words are easy to control. Actions are much harder to fake over long periods of time. Anyone can say they're happy for you, that they support you, or that they'll always have your back. But eventually, reality exposes intention. When a person's behavior consistently contradicts their promises, their actions become a far more reliable source of truth than their language. People who carry hidden resentment understand that openly expressing dislike could damage their reputation. They don't want to be seen as jealous, bitter, or difficult. So they build an image of friendliness. They compliment you in public, smile during conversations, and tell others that they value your relationship. On the surface, everything appears normal. Yet when moments arrive that require genuine loyalty or support, they quietly disappear. Imagine you're preparing for something important: a job interview, a business launch, an exam, or a major life event. They enthusiastically tell you they'll help. They promise to be there if you need anything. They sound sincere, but when the time comes, they're suddenly unavailable. They forget. They cancel at the last minute. They become too busy. Once or twice, this may simply be life. But when the pattern repeats, it reveals something much deeper. Their words create expectations their actions never fulfill. This inconsistency often appears in small moments before it shows up in significant ones. They tell you they'll call, but never do. They promise to send information, but conveniently forget. They say they'll introduce you to someone who could help, yet weeks pass without any effort. Individually, each incident seems harmless. Collectively, they form a picture of someone who enjoys appearing supportive more than actually being supportive. Watch how they behave when helping you requires sacrifice. Genuine support costs something. It may require time, energy, attention, or inconvenience. People who truly care willingly make those investments because your success matters to them. Someone hiding resentment often offers support only when it's effortless. The moment helping you demands real commitment, their enthusiasm fades. They continue speaking as though they're supportive while quietly avoiding every opportunity to prove it. Another revealing behavior is inconsistency between private and public interactions. In private, they may act friendly, encouraging, and respectful, but in public, they rarely defend you, acknowledge your contributions, or stand beside you when criticism appears. They don't openly attack you because that would damage their image. Instead, they remain silent when your reputation needs support. Their silence protects them while leaving you exposed. Notice how they respond when other people criticize you. A genuine friend doesn't necessarily start an argument, but they usually provide balance. They mention your strengths, clarify misunderstandings, or prevent unfair judgments from spreading. Someone who secretly dislikes you often remains completely passive. Sometimes they even add subtle agreement through facial expressions, quiet comments, or carefully chosen stories that reinforce the criticism without making them appear responsible. These individuals also tend to make promises that sound generous but carry very little intention behind them. They'll say things like, "If you ever need anything, let me know," or "I'm always here for you." These phrases create an image of loyalty without requiring immediate action. The true test comes when you actually need assistance. Suddenly, the enthusiasm disappears. Excuses become frequent, responses become delayed, and the willingness they described never materializes. Another subtle contradiction appears in the way they celebrate your ambitions. They may verbally encourage your goals while behaving in ways that quietly interfere with them. They distract you when you need focus. They invite you into habits that move you away from your priorities. They waste your time while insisting they're only trying to help you relax. Their words say they believe in your future, but their actions consistently pull you away from it. Paid attention to reliability during difficult seasons. Anyone can act supportive when life is easy and there is nothing at stake. Real character appears during pressure. When you experience setbacks, financial stress, health challenges, or emotional hardship, people reveal where you truly stand in their lives. Those carrying hidden resentment often become emotionally distant. They respond slower. They avoid deeper conversations. They offer polite phrases instead of meaningful presence. Their concern exists mainly at the level of appearance rather than commitment. Body language often exposes this contradiction even more clearly than behavior. They say they're excited for your achievement, but their voice lacks warmth. They congratulate you while avoiding eye contact. They offer praise with crossed arms, forced smiles, or expressions that briefly reveal disappointment before returning to politeness. The conscious mind controls words. The unconscious mind leaks through posture, facial muscles, tone, and timing. When these signals consistently disagree with spoken language, it's usually the nonverbal communication that deserves your attention. Perhaps the strongest evidence comes from repetition. Everyone occasionally fails to keep a promise or misses an opportunity to help. That alone doesn't indicate hidden hostility. What matters is the ongoing pattern. If someone repeatedly speaks with kindness while behaving with indifference, repeatedly offers loyalty while avoiding responsibility, repeatedly praises you while quietly withholding support, the contradiction itself becomes the message. Over time, the gap between their words and their actions grows so wide that it no longer feels like coincidence, but a reflection of emotions they never intend to admit openly. Because despite everything they say, their behavior consistently reveals that maintaining the appearance of friendship matters far more to them than actually acting like a friend.